to talk to you today about young plasma and longevity. I sort of want to give you a little bit of background that'll take you into what we've seen with young plasma in patients. You know, I always say we're done with the rats. We've seen the rats forever. We're ready to see what we can do to help patients. So, thermodynamics, physics, and math govern who we are. Get a cup of coffee, leave it on the table for a while, it cools. Drop the coffee on the floor, it spills, it spreads out. So we live in a world where energy goes from concentration to spread, and we can't avoid that. That is the law of thermodynamics. So aging is not actually a biology problem, but I want you to think of it in terms of a problem of physics. If it wasn't that problem, you'd have to buy a new car, your car wouldn't wear out, your air conditioning wouldn't wear out, nothing would. But what happens, unfortunately, is that life requires a concentration of potential energy that you can actually use that eventually disperses. And the work we do every day to fight this off is our metabolism. But as you make your molecules, there's a byproduct. There's a cost of doing business. And those byproducts then create problems day in, day out. And what that means is that as those products are created and the byproducts are there, your ability now to continue to work efficiently and rebuild back to where you started goes away. And you can't avoid that. I don't care how hard you think, you go to the top of this building and you jump, you're going down. You cannot defy the laws of physics. Now, if we can't keep making the 3D folded structures, then we can't run our system. Well, we can do that when we're younger. Thermodynamics hasn't hit the kid's body quite yet. The number one thing that goes, that hits every part of our body, is the vascular system. And this is what Leonard Hayflick talked about. That's where the Hayflick limit came from and what he studied. And the vascular system hits everything in the body. I see it a lot in OBGYN, because even if you give somebody hormone replacement, they'll still say, well, my hormones are good and my hot flashes are gone, but I'm losing my hair. Because think about the blood vessels all shrinking down. Your body's trying to preserve itself as much as it can. It's trying to lower its cost of doing business. Now, we talk a lot about cells, but let's think of why the cells function well. It's because of what's surrounding them. And I don't think enough people talk about that. And we call that the extracellular matrix. It's sort of a push me, pull you, where the cell does its job, but circulating around that is the blood vessels. And in the blood vessels, and I just put 3 key proteins here. In the blood vessels these three key proteins. There's hundreds of them. And part of the big problem with the extracellular matrix is we don't know everything that's in there. So therefore, we can't say, oh, well, let me give you this in a supplement or that in a supplement, because it's so complicated. Now, the extracellular matrix, think of it as your blood vessels. Think of it as the scaffolding in a building. You know, when they're building a building and they got the complicated scaffolding that they've got that they're painting, or the window washer guys, the scaffolding that he's on, that's supporting your cells. What happens over time is collagen that's in it breaks down, your advanced glycation or your sugar products build up, and your ability, because every time you make a molecule, you lose a little bit of ability to make it again. These guys that make the vascular system work can't be produced anymore. And it happens every minute as you're on this planet longer and longer. Interesting. The vascularity is placed around the stem cells because they talk to each other. So you can put all the stem cells in the world that you want, and I'm not saying that they're not going to do a little bit of a job, but if you put them around a scaffolding that can't talk to them, that doesn't have the proteins that can make the whole thing balance, you're not going to get as far as you possibly can to rebuild this system. This is a big key. And where do we see this? Here's a sample of the central nervous system scaffolding around the cells. But here's 2 graphs. Look how the proteins change. Look how the proteins in somebody who is 30 versus somebody who is 70. So the slide with the heart on it says that the cardiovascular disease, more toxic proteins, look how they increase with aging. The Alzheimer's bad proteins also increase. Now again, why did my kids who had those issues from my rotten microbiome and probably the goldfish and the Oreos and all the junk food that I fed them because I was so busy trying to keep myself alive delivering babies, why were they able to then clean everything back up and turn their brain around? But as we get older, we can't. Here's part of your key. This is what's happening in your system. The proteins can't be built up. You make rotten, less efficient proteins. Welcome to physics. And here's the great news. The bad proteins build up in the brain first. Capillary endothelial cells, that's where the bad stuff starts. So now the brain's an issue and the rest of the body follows. And what I added on this slide is look though, when young plasma was put in the system and ran through the brain by the stem cells, that you can see how the capillaries changed. The proteins changed, the state of being changed, the blood vessels changed. There was a more youthful proteome circulating, which is going to affect the stem cells a lot better. So you can remove and detox, but you can't defy the forces of physics. If you put somebody on a plasmapheresis machine, and I think it's beneficial, detox is cool, but you can detox and detox and detox, and you can stimulate that cell, but you can't make that cell young again to the point where it's going to be able to make the protein it couldn't make. You want to know what's a really good example? I'm 59 years old, okay? You can put me on the plasma machine that's out in Rad City, and you can give me albumin and turn it over and turn it over and turn it over. My ovaries are not going to start making estrogen again. I still got to take it every morning. So if that was the case, if we could reverse it over and over and over again, you don't have to do it on the rats. You can just follow common sense. But if you add in young proteins, young factors, young things that you don't even know you need because we don't even know they exist, because we don't know everything that's in our body, what we will find is benefit. Why? Because with aging, and this is from the Weiss-Corray paper that was published last year. Tony Weiss-Corray does a lot at Stanford with mice and young plasma. And what they found is that, immune cells accumulate in the fat cells. As the blood proteins changed, the stem cells were affected. But read the last thing. Young blood both reverses age-related profiles and initiates novel pathways. Systemic rejuvenation of genes, encoding components of the electron transport chain is especially striking. It upregulates mitochondrial function because you give it the support. You put a new chain on the bike, you put a new battery in your car, and it lasts a lot longer. Now, why? Because we hear about all these other things that people want to use. They use stem cells. We're using exosomes. We're trying all these other things. Well, look what young plasma contains. 200 cc's, just 200